It's showtime.
It's showtime.
Yeah,
Listen up,
absolutely. Yes, sir.
ladies and gentlemen. This is going to be a rather short one, so please buckle up and get ready for the ride. Get ready for the ride. Hank, what are we going to discuss today?
Um, I'm. I have to be transparent. So I've been thinking about the fact that there are instances where we as human beings complain and we complain and we complain and we're always pointing fingers at something that we can control, but we don't take accountability and responsibility for our own actions because I think we find it easier to point a finger. And what's that old cliche when you point a finger at somebody?
Is it four? Is it three that's pointing back?
Oh, it's more than one pointing back at you. And I think that oftentimes either we don't know how to take responsibility or we refuse to take responsibility because it's easier in many instances to complain and or find fault. And I believe that no, that's a I was going to make a statement which is not necessarily true. Just because someone is an adult, just because someone is 25, 30, 40, 50, doesn't mean that they know. You would think that they would know how to do certain things, how to respond to figures. You would think, but some people have been enabled. Some people are always waiting for somebody else to tell them what to do, when to do, how to do, where to do, who to do. Okay. And that way, they don't have to do anything but follow. And because they're following, they don't learn to do, or they're afraid to do, want someone else to tell them what to do so that they can point a finger back to say, well, you told me. If you hadn't told me, I was following your directions. Okay. So yesterday you and I were talking about the the 4-day work week. You remember?
We did.
O-
This was not on camera, by the way, guys. But yes, we did.
Okay, for a 4-day work week. Now, some people are listening to this and say, 4-day work week. What the hell is he talking about? It's a 5-day work week. It's this, that, and the other. Okay, fine. But Leland, you know, and I know that there are people who only work 3 days a week.
That's true. There are people that only work 1 day a week.
That's happening. And there are some people who quote don't work. But I'm just saying for those, there are people who work 3 days a week. A lot of people that I know in healthcare, particularly nurses, work 3 12-hour days.
Yeah, three on, four off.
Right. Firemen, firefighters, you know. But that's 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 how that rolls. You follow me?
I follow.
But in certain countries, it is a typical 4-day work week. That's it. 4 days, 32 hours. And some of the questions that come with that here in America is what negative impact, what are the pros and cons? The pros and cons. Now, a lot of people would probably say, man, just having a 4-day work week is be great, man. All the stuff I can do. But the flip side of that is, I'm the boss now. Am I going to pay you for 40 hours or I'm going to pay you for 32 hours? And if you can't make ends meet now with the 40 hours and I take you to 32 hours, what you going to do to make up for those that 8 hours of lost income? Because we may be headed in that direction. So people are sitting back now sucking their thumbs, not taking responsibility, and they're going to complain when we go from 5 days a week to 4 days a week. and we could be taking responsibility today doing something. So some of us are so sanctimonious, so arrogant, so egotistical, so all-knowing, so highly intelligent that we think we don't need or we're too good to do certain things.
I want to say this though, real quick, and this is the scary part with technology, is that for a very long time, what we have done is we have equated value, income with time.
Mm, mm, mm. Yes.
We have essentially looked at how long it may or may not take to do something and then try to put a value towards that. And what's crazy, just real quick. So my wife and I were reading a particular book, and this book was talking about seed time and harvest time. Can you imagine? And actually, most of us can't imagine this, but just like let this sink in. Would you believe that over a certain period of humanity, that people would work diligently for months, even an entire year, and only receive a quote unquote payday once a year or for one season of the year?
Hmm.
That season was called harvest.
Hmm.
Depending on what they planted, one harvest might be longer than the other, but they still had seed time. They still had to till that land,
Hmm.
had to water it on a continuous basis. But now people have forgotten about the centuries of how basically cause and effect works. And people have become more accustomed to, if I put a quarter in the slot today, by the end of today, I'm expecting to have a dollar. It sounds silly, but that's actually what people think.
Leland, we were talking about telling some stories to hopefully to make it relevant to to um, to certain things. And you remember I was talking about the bamboo tree. May I?
Absolutely.
Now the story goes, and I'm going to paraphrase it. The story goes that if you plant a bamboo seed today, and you till the soil, you fertilize it, and you water it. You water it for a year. You see nothing. You till the soil, you fertilize it, you water it. The second year, what happens, Leland?
Nothing.
Then you do the same thing. The third year, what happens, Leland?
Nothing.
You do it for the fourth year, what happens, Leland?
Nothing.
So somewhere between the fourth and fifth year, this tree grows 80 feet. And people go like, dude, crazy. Okay, that's fine. Call me what you want to call me, just as long as you call me. And everybody thinks that the tree grew 80 feet in a year. But what they don't realize is that that bamboo tree grew a root, tap root. And someone says that the tap root grew 80 feet. But the root structure grew to be able to anchor an 80-foot tall tree. So my question to you is, you've planted an idea, you've had an idea, you've planted it. And did you nurture it? Did you do what was necessary to have it to grow, not right now, but 5 years from now? Now, we just mentioned that we're going to go to a 40-day, a 4-day work week. If you don't plant now and take care of it, when you go to a 4-day work week, you shouldn't worry. Why? Because your harvest is not going to come in right now. Your harvest is going to come in time, 5 years down the road. And people go like, oh, man, okay, that makes sense. Let me say something else. I'm gonna tell you another story, Leland, because I think stories are important for people, whether they remember them or not. Because sometimes we miss the lesson. We miss the lesson. But here's the lesson. There's a story about these two neighbors, and they both lived, out not in the city, but they lived out in the countryside. And one morning they both showed up outside about 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock in the morning. Doesn't matter the time. They were going to chop wood for the day. So this guy named Hank started to chop, and he chopped and he chopped and he chopped and he chopped, and he would look over, and his friend Leland was gone. He couldn't understand it, but he continued to chop and he chopped. Leland would come back and they chop and this. And the day goes on. And at the end of the day, looks, and Hank's stack is only about 4 or 5 feet high. And he
which is
looks
pretty
over.
good. That's pretty good, by the way, Hank.
Okay. But I look over Leland, and your stack is about 8, 10 feet high, and it's bigger than mine and all this other stuff. And I go like, what the dickens is this? So I come over and says, hey, Leland, I don't understand, my brother. Man, listen, I've been chopping all day. I didn't take any breaks. I didn't go to the bathroom. The only thing I did was I drank water because I had my thermos there. Okay. And but every time I turned around, you were taking a break. You were going in the house or coming into the house, out of the house. Help me to understand, man, how my stack is so small. I did all the work, and your stack is so high. Can you tell me what happened? How does this? Is this magic or something?
Hocus pocus.
Hocus pocus. And Leland said, no, Hank. He said, every time I went in the house, I said, well, yeah. He said, well, I was sharpening my axe. Now, somebody gonna get that eventually. But my question to you is, how often, how often do you sharpen your axe? Because if you're not sharpening your axe, you're not going to be chopping much wood. And we're talking metaphorically, y'all,
We're talking metaphorically and physically,
and physically. That's
because
right.
you could still do the physical act of swinging an axe, but it not be as effective as it should be.
Mm, mm, mm.
And I'll just add a little bit of a bow there at the end, which is how many of us have looked at the success of someone else, belittled what that person has done successfully,
Mm, mm, mm.
and you guys have done it before. Oh, if Bob can do it, I can do it. Oh, Bob's missing a toe. I got all 10 of mine, so I can do more than what Bob's doing.
Yeah, he handicapped.
Oh, right, yeah, and Bob's a handy, right? So people have done it. I've listened. I've been a part of conversations where I hear people doing that same thing, right? But here's the deal: your skills aren't as sharp as Bob's. Your
Whoa.
focus isn't as strong as Bob's. Your consistency ain't even on the same level as Bob's.
Hmm.
Now, instead of blaming Bob, what we could do is look and say, okay, looks like Bob. Like, what tool did someone use to sharpen their axe? Maybe I can use that tool. How did they structure their times where they're able to be consistent? Maybe I can take a wink at that and see what I can do. There was a post that I made on on the YouTube page yesterday, and it was a guy sipping tea, and on the caption it said, you know, it basically said, hey, this economic downturn is a fantastic opportunity for you to create wealth. But for someone to create wealth, they would have to see it as an opportunity.
That's right. That's absolutely right. You remember yesterday we were chatting. I forget I forget what we were chatting about, but through our conversation, we were talking about some things that we could consider moving forward, right? And I said, man, what if we were to show in some fashion the track record or some aspects of the track record that we've had over the last few years. And you said, well, what do you mean? And I said, well, you remember when I met you, we were evaluating a 286 room hotel. And you called me to the table, and we got with a friend who's a general contractor, and we walked the land, and we went out and we inspected, and we did all this other stuff. And you remember on paper it was 286 units, but by walking it, we realized it was 186 units. And the paperwork was not reflective of, didn't represent any of that. And we started to talk and ask questions and realize the fact that possibly this deal, though it looked enticing on the front end, could be an albatross. It could be a money laundering expedition. And we started to ask some succinct questions to the owner of the property, and he stopped taking phone calls. You remember? So what I'm getting at is all that glitters isn't gold, but if you don't have some aspect of knowledge about what it is to be done, you may do and pay an enormous price. So in talking, Leland, what we did was we started to exchange ideas, and we started to create a bigger stack. Because here's the deal. You came to the table with an idea. Talking to me, I brought an idea to the table. And within 10 to 15 minutes, we were just gleeful in ideas. And because of that idea, I get to that was 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock yesterday, 2 o'clock. No, it was like 2 o'clock yesterday, right? I get to my office this morning, and I see that you had something. You had sent, I don't know, probably about 10 different links of information that you had played with, you were aware of for years. And what am I saying, people? What am I saying is, if your friend, the folk that you know don't know, and you're trying to get something done, you got to find somebody who does know.
Somebody who's been sharpening their axe.
Absolutely. And somebody that you know might introduce you to something that could be beneficial to you, and you're ready to jump in, but you're not ready because your axe isn't sharp. And then you slow roll the process because you want to be in the game, but you're not in game shape. Okay? And so I say that to say, Leland, that we have to be agile. You talk about opportunities. We have to be we have to be ready. And people, you can decide what ready means. And if you realize that you can't do it by yourself, you have to be willing to reach out and find people that can help you put this puzzle together. Can't hear you, my friend.
No, I'm saying that's right. That's right. My apology. That's right.
Okay. So sometimes we don't know what questions to ask, which is okay. Sometimes we don't know what to say. That's okay. But take good, copious notes so that when you leave, you can go back and do some research. Because sometimes maybe just one article, a couple lines in a book, talking to a friend, all of those things might unlock your genius. But if you're so self-centered and all-knowing, you will be unwilling to share because your greed quotient is overtaking your pocketbook.
Dang. You touched on some big stuff.
But have I lied? Because you know this. 2 months ago we talked. I said, hey, listen, this dude wants to do something. I
Mhm.
said, but I'm out of my league. What he wants to do is out of my league. He said, well, hey, what's he wanting to do? I said, well, he's thinking about doing X, Y, Z.
Mhm.
And you said, well, have you talked to Rod about it? And I said, well, I haven't talked to him yet. And I said, but that's a good idea because of X, Y, Z. And said, okay, fine. So we talked. The we the three of us talked, and then we go to this event, and the guy talking, we asking questions, and and we provided information, and because they weren't ready, they didn't know what questions to ask us, and because they were reluctant to say what it is that they were trying to get done, we didn't know what questions to ask them. So we said, hey, we'll give them whatever information and avail ourselves for them.
Right.
Well, that deal went absolutely nowhere because those individuals, in my opinion, were unwilling, not reluctant, unwilling to share because they feared that because we had certain talents that we would take over. I think they felt that we would take over because we came with some street cred and they didn't have any. What am I saying? Don't be afraid to invite somebody else to the table. But when you invite somebody to the table, make certain that you've insulated yourself. Leland, you remember the first time that you called me and you said, hey, listen, I understand. I'd like to talk to you. And what was one of the first things I asked you for?
Oh, a non-disclosure.
A non-disclosure, a non-compete agreement. I said because I wanted to protect me and to protect whom, Leland?
Protect both parties.
That's absolutely correct. And then we could talk freely about what have you, because I had signed that I ain't gonna tell nobody about what he's trying to get done.
Hold on, Hank. I'm gonna have to stop it right there just because of time.
Okay.
But hey, if people listen in detail, you drop a lot of good nuggets. But that's gonna be silly. That's gonna depend on them. I want to say this real quick. If you guys have any questions, of course, during these chats, you can always put them into the chat, and we will answer them for you guys. But in the meantime, we will chat again with you guys very soon.